There is no market in the United States that's thought of as a bigger crash than Las Vegas, Nevada. And there is nobody better at looking at the numbers than in one and only Mr. Brian Leba. How you doing, Brian?
What's up, everyone? I'm glad to be back on the show and rubbing it in Michael's face for losing another month.
Yes, yes, yes. I have not lost the bet, but I am now down to my last strike. If you don't know what we're talking about, Brian and I have made a bet 2 months ago that said, I believe that there will be a surprise month where the median home price in Vegas goes up. Now, the reason I made that bet is because I expected all these high priced homes and new home builders to discount to a price that would just naturally pull the median up. Shorter answer is the last 2 months I have been wrong, but I have one more month and I have hope. I have hope, a little hope.
Yep.
So, what's going on with the numbers, man?
So things are getting pretty interesting out here in Vegas. Look, by no means am I going to say that the market's good. It's not great. It's not good. It's neither of the two. It's still, a pretty depressed market in many ways. But there is tremendous light at the end of the tunnel, and that's kind of where we're going to focus. If for those of you out there that do subscribe, thank you. But if you
Oh
saw
yeah,
my
if you
last
haven't,
video,
subscribe him. He does amazing stuff.
yeah. So if you saw the thumbnail for my last video, it's the king of equity. It's me sitting on a throne with a pile of cash. And, that's kind of a metaphor for a lot of what we're seeing in this market is a lot of these sellers that are just refusing to capitulate and they're just not dropping their prices. Ultimately, that may be a good strategy or maybe a poor strategy. But what I did notice surprisingly, especially over the last few weeks, since the beginning of the year, and even the week before, which is very surprising, I started seeing more and more activity. Whereas every day I would just see in my searches price reduction, withdrawn listing. Now you're starting to see some actual movement. Some of my listings that, frankly, I was ready to put in another price reduction, and I just put one into escrow yesterday, and it was just completely out of the blue. That was very, very surprising to see. But where we're seeing is this: there's three main types of properties that are actually moving at this junction, and I don't care
Okay.
where and what side of town you're in, they're pretty universal truths. So one is the most obvious: you have these sellers that are finally capitulating, they've had enough, and so they're just bringing the prices down. Even one of the rare, there's like 30 bank owned properties in all of Las Vegas right now. One of my clients was interested in one REO property, and they lowered the property to right where that threshold is. Like this little neighborhood, there were properties that were selling at a certain price point, and once they got under, so this property dropped below 400,000, and that was a big price point. The second they dropped it under 400,000, all of a sudden they had multiple offers on this foreclosure property. Now, was it a deal? No, it wasn't a deal. They weren't under market value. They were at market value, but they reached a price point where it actually made sense. And previous sales had benchmarked that level. So what you're seeing is every neighborhood is going to have a threshold, and the majority of these neighborhoods have not figured that out yet. Every day I still pull neighborhoods where you'll see 9 properties for sale, none under contract, 7 for sale, 1 under contract, nothing sold in 3, 4, 6 months. So those neighborhoods are very dangerous because we don't really know where that threshold is. You got to remember, every single subdivision has its own intrinsic value, and there's a big difference when I say intrinsic value. A lot of these brand new neighborhoods, they're felonious prices. The home may have been $800,000 base price, but then they got $600,000 for a lot premium.
Yeah.
That's just a
Where'd that
made
go?
up.
Yeah.
That's just a made up number that at any other time in history, it would have been a $10,000 lot premium. So that pushed the price of the property to a non-existent value that you could get away with. Now that these properties are coming back on the resale market, people want out at near, above, or at where they purchased, and it was never worth it to begin with.
Right.
Whereas you have other neighborhoods where they are finding the price point where properties are moving. So again, you have certain neighborhoods that have reached their price point, but I would say maybe 10% of the market has actually figured that out. The rest are still in flux. Then you have properties that, of course, are exceptionally upgraded. So if you have a very, very nice property and you're not absurdly overpriced, those properties are still moving. Now, the difference is you're not likely to get multiple offers. You may get one offer. If you're lucky, you may have one offer with another person who wants to write an offer, but is discouraged that there is an offer. But they're going to move. They're still going to move. The big surprise for most of people is the fact that the homes that are the easiest to sell and that are really moving are your single story properties. I had one neighborhood where I had listings, 5 properties for sale. Now, there had been 3 of us that were sitting, lingering, just coming down in price, trying to figure out where this threshold is to make people move. One single story popped up, gone in a week. Another single story popped up, gone in a week. Why? Because it was a single story in a gated community and it was priced fairly. Now, where you're having a lot of problem, and for my clients out there that may be watching, or any of you who are prospective investors that I've spoken to in the past, this is precisely what I've been telling people for the last 5 years. If you're looking at a 3-bedroom home that's 2-story with a 2-car garage, that is so ubiquitous. There's nothing special about that. Virtually everything that's been built over the last 15 years mirrors that type of product, up to $700,000-$800,000. So the problem is when you get into a market like this where everything kind of constrains itself, you have the pick of the litter. Everything is, a 1,700 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-story, 2-car garage home. So when you have such an influx of inventory like that, it really becomes either you're substantially upgraded or you just hit the price point, but there's nothing special about the product. Whereas single story homes don't tend to be built nearly as much, especially on the lower end. You do not find many single story homes. So that's why that product itself has become so special. And because you have so many people moving here from out of state and a lot of retirees moving here from out of state, they don't want a 2-story home. They want a single story. Everyone can live in a single story home. And to most people like myself, it's preferred and more desirable. So this is actually a really good time to learn that your markets are going to go up, they're going to go down, but inherently certain products are always going to be more desirable than others, and certain products aren't really easily replicable. It's been 20 years now since they've built a 1,200 square foot single story home in my area of Las Vegas. It will never, ever be built again. It's just never going to be built. So to some degree, that's actually a special product because there's only a small amount of those properties that exist. So this is where things are starting to get pretty weird out here, is that we are starting to see some activity. So while for the last 3 months, every single month has consecutively been the worst month we've ever had for sales. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this month mirrors that forecast. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the worst month ever of all time. But I'm also going to say that I won't be surprised if February's numbers show a pretty rapid turnaround. I'm not saying we're going to be on par from where we were before, but I think we're reaching the end of these depressed sales months. Now, the major factor that we need to look at towards the future, right? Because we all kind of get engrossed in the moment and what's going on, but it's more important to look at what's next, what's coming, and how can we be in a position to succeed rather than be reactive to the market. So, one thing that you really, really need to focus on is the fact that, and again, I'm not talking nationally, even though this is a national problem, but specifically here in Vegas. I talk about Las Vegas because that's what I know, and it would be a little egregious of me to push that narrative towards the rest of the country. So I'm not trying to be arrogant there. But here in Las Vegas, the one issue that we have is this. Our inventory, like it typically happens this time of year, has depleted month by month, week by week consecutively, and we're still going down. This is normal activity, so it's nothing worth freaking out about. However, we're in a disastrous market, the worst sales that we've ever had. And for us here in Las Vegas, we're sitting at around 6,000 homes. Now, that means nothing to you, but to bring edification to that, in a normal market, in normal times, we sell about 3,000 homes a month. Right now, we're only selling, 1,300 homes. This month might only be 1,100. So right now, it looks like we have a 5-month supply of inventory, which technically is defined as a balanced market, right? We can debate that, but technically that's just a balanced market. It feels terrible because we're not used to any normality here in Las Vegas. But think about this, guys. The moment this market turns around, because you know it's going to turn around, nothing remains stagnant forever. So at some point in time, and we can argue that. We can argue whether it's this spring, we can argue whether it's going to be next summer. I don't care what the argument is. But at some point in time, this market will turn around. But consider the fact that when this market turns around, let's just say we just produce normal numbers. When we get back to 3,000 sales a month, that's a 2-month supply of inventory. 2 months. That's nothing. Now, consider this. The longer, just like I was concerned about prices rising, right? The more prices rise, you're going to have a crash of descent. The higher you get, the harder the fall. So for years, I had been saying, I kind of hope that we manage to plateau and not fall off a cliff. Now we fell off a cliff, but this is different than last time. The big issue we're going to see is the longer this goes on, the more we're going to have buyers that are sitting on the sidelines waiting and salivating to jump back in. So the longer we have these holdouts, the more of like a backflow you create. It's more pressure. So what ended up happening in 2012 was we had a terrible market. You know, we had recession, property values here in Vegas dropped by 50%. We really bottomed out in 2011. But what happened is at a certain point in time, everyone woke up and realized that the prices then made absolutely no sense. When homes were selling for substantially less than the land was worth, investors said, you know what, the cap rates are through the roof. Who cares? I don't care. And everyone started buying as investors. Once those investors jumped in, other people felt comfortable because we saw that wheel spinning. And then all of a sudden, overnight, everyone came out and everyone was buying, and we had multiple offers. And that started the trend of the decade where we kept seeing these price increases. While this is different than 2008, this is very similar symptoms as far as I think what we're going to see moving forward. So what you're going to see moving forward is whether it's this spring, whether it's the summer, or whether this takes an entire year for the market to recover, the longer it takes to recover, the more brisk the recovery is going to be. So guys, I'm telling you right here, right now, as crazy as this sounds, and maybe this sounds hyperbolic, but the reality is once this market turns around, you're going to have fights over properties. You're going to have multiple offers, and it's kind of going to be going back to where it was, only because we don't have inventory. We don't have inventory. And the only way to create inventory is to motivate sellers to sell. And still, new homes are still substantially more expensive than their resale counterparts. And even if rates come back down to 5%, which is historically great, that will bring people back into the market. But if you're a homeowner and you're locked in at 2.65,
not selling.
Motivation just really ain't there to pop for a 5% mortgage. So I think you're still going to see, because of the delta between new and resale homes and because of interest rates, I still think it's going to be a tough task to motivate sellers to just vacate their properties and move elsewhere, especially in a market like Las Vegas where people are moving here. We don't have an exodus like other places like San Francisco, let's say. So this is a very unique market. It's very difficult to necessarily try to compare this to last time, but you can see how this is going to repair itself. I would say the only caveat that we need to consider is if this year does turn out to be mass amounts of layoffs and people legitimately lose their jobs. And for Las Vegas, you know, we still rely heavily on tourism. So if people stop traveling, then that's going to put pressure on the job market. And then people might be forced to sell their home, even though they don't want to. But short of a massive economic recession where people are losing their jobs, that's the only way I see us creating inventory. So things are definitely getting interesting.
I think there's a couple of things I want to follow up here. Let's first and foremost put a pin on the price. I think the month of December was the 4th month going down. What's the median home price in Vegas?
Yeah, let's run those numbers. I know it was 420. That's kind of a joke, huh? Hey, sorry if I offended any of the people out there.
Elon Musk, it's 420.
Yeah, exactly, man. So we ended last month at $420,000 for the median sales price. Now, we started the year in January at $435,000, and we maxed out at $485,000. So truth be told, we're down $65,000 from the high set in May.
Peak. Yep. Mhm.
Now, I was actually talking with a client before we did the show, and my client said that they're looking at the Vegas market. They're a little bit concerned or disappointed that the prices haven't come down to the pre-pandemic level, which is what their expectation was. And so, guys, I'm talking about Las Vegas. Don't ask me what's up in Wichita, Kansas. I don't know. But here's the problem.
I don't either.
Right. Well, but here's the reality of it. Here's the gravity. We're at $420,000. I think we're down like about almost 14% from the high. Well, if you look at January of 2020, I'm looking at it right now on the screen. The median price was $300,000. $300,000. So if your expectation is that we're going to return to pre-pandemic levels, you're also indirectly saying that prices are going to go down 30% from where we are right now.
Not happening.
And frankly, I just don't see that, because there's too many people that will start buying if we drop another 10%. So if that's your expectation, I would say you probably want to move on to another market, or don't miss out on buying opportunities, because you're not going to satisfy your expectation. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. So another thing I want to follow up on, and something I do weekly, is I have two top-notch agents on, one in Orange County, one in Seattle. So I just spoke with Beth Traverso, who's my Seattle agent, King County specifically. And for whatever reason, Seattle always starts their spring selling season early. I don't know if it's weather related or whatever, but she has already told me, pretty much just like you said, right after Christmas, she started seeing open houses being more attended, listings getting offers, just more action on available inventory. And again, it's really weird. Her inventory year on year up 800%.
Yeah. And that's 800%. We're nowhere near that. Right.
But here's the rub. Even up 800%, her months of inventory, 1.65.
Right. Right.
Right. So don't get it twisted with these crazy numbers.
Right.
So I am curious, right? When is the norm? Because normal, you've told me January historically is Vegas' worst month.
Correct.
So when does that turn? Is it March? Is that the spring selling season like most of the country in Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, I can pull some numbers here right now, but yeah, I mean, we pretty much mirror the rest of the country in that aspect that, typically your sales, I'm pulling here, typically your sales are really going to start rebounding in March. That is the month. And then of course we kind of peak out, around May and June are peak season, but you really see a massive uptick in March closings. And last night I watched, it was a little bit cheesy, and of course it was very selective in who they chose to represent, but there's a pretty good, since this is an investor show, check out CNBC. They had a show about New York and escalating rents. So I would recommend you guys watch it. It's interesting if you strip away the cheesy anecdotal stories of people who've been displaced for various reasons. And if you're intelligent enough, you can kind of see through the bullshit. But what they're basically saying is that the rental market in New York City has absolutely exploded. So in New York, during the pandemic, everyone left, and so they lowered everyone's rents. And so some people, let's just be honest, these people would never have been able to afford the rent, but they came in because of those lowered rents. Now these rents are being, in some cases, doubled. But the moral of the story is that these rents are above where they were before, and there's no vacancies in New York. Everything's being done in a week. So, for all the doom and the gloom out there, the reality is not necessarily quite as bad. And again, this is just nothing like what we've experienced before. So, keep that in mind.
You got to watch months of inventory, because I think that's going to be Vegas's telltale sign, like every other place. If you look at percentages, they're going to be, percentages lie, statistics lie.
Right.
But if you look at months of inventory, that's going to really show you buyers, sellers market, what's going on. And I suspect Vegas, by March, it's a very different story when you and I talk.
Yeah. And, I just kind of flash back just to make sure, but when you look at the inventory levels, I can go back week by week for a decade. if you look at the week by week inventory levels, inventory typically decreases until you get to the end. It's somewhere between the last week in February and mid March. So as low as we are, and I just looked the other day and we were below last week substantially.
Wow.
Inventory is going to creep down. I wouldn't be surprised if by March we end up around 4,500, 5,000 properties. And that's when we're coming out, guys. So like I said, as bad as things look, if you look a little bit farther down the line, there's a lot of really good metrics. I wouldn't be surprised if we drop a little bit in value and then we manage to like plateau out, only because we have such a constrained amount of inventory.
And don't forget, you're going to get that surprise uptick in January, just because I said that.
Because he can't lose the bet, right, guys?
Yeah, because I can't lose $1. Come on, Vegas. Well, the last thing I want to talk about is what I'm hearing from Orange County.
Okay.
Because I think this is happening in a lot of markets. So Orange County's median home price, just so we're on the same page, is $1 million, rough and tough.
What a deal.
And it's crazy. What my agents are telling me there, my agent that I speak with every week is telling me, he's like, everything that's 2x the median, which I always term as luxury, crickets.
Yeah.
It's, anything 2x the median price, $2 million and above. He's talking 100 days on market, which is unheard of. And he's starting to get to the point where there are people like, hey, if you get my price, I'll sell. If not, I'll take it off the market. So even the active listings is being distorted by fake listings because they're not real prices. So I am curious about Vegas luxury market. So again, the median's about 430. So let's talk about $1 million and above. Are you seeing that market have more or less cracks, or what's going on there?
Yeah, the ultra luxury market has been affected in many ways, and I would say universally the truth is the same. I mean, let's just be honest. We had a whole generation of crypto kids that just fell ass forward into money, and they used it and they leveraged. And let's also be honest, because I've got one client worth $60 million. He bought a $6 million home from me and he put 50% down. Why? Because his bank gave him a jumbo mortgage at like 2.5%. And he was like, why would I not take advantage of it?
I could use the other $3 million to do more than 2.5. It's a wise financial move.
Yeah, I can get 10% ROI
easy
without doing anything. Why not? So I think there was also a little bit of an air of people safely leveraging their money. Like, why not spend a little bit more? It's pretty cheap. So I think now you're kind of dealing with a little bit of that backlash. And, I don't know if you guys have been reading, but, the new coined phrase is the rich session. Have you heard that?
I heard that. Yeah. Rich session. Yeah.
If you kind of interpolate that, the rich session, for you guys that haven't followed up, they're basically saying that, and it's pretty evident on the low end of the job market. I mean, dude, Starbucks can't hire people. Target can't hire people.
Wages are up.
Wages $20 an hour for menial jobs, and you just can't find people. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got like Meta, right? Facebook and Twitter, but you've got all these high-end jobs, and you have people that are having a difficult time finding these replacement jobs. So ironically, it's the wealthier people that are being displaced in the job market instead of the bottom, which typically it's the bottom that gets cut out, less so on the top. So if you're having employment issues at the top of the market, it's pretty natural to presume that you're also going to see that luxury segment of homes faltering as well. So I think that's the correlation. What I'm seeing here is what I was warning people for years and years and years. And we talked about it in like the first episode where we were talking about this, is in Las Vegas, right? We just discussed the median price is $420. But for homes priced basically 2x, exactly what you said, $750 to $1 million. That's the problematic price range.
Exactly.
Because in the good areas here in Las Vegas, the problem you run into is, like I said, no builder builds a 1,200 square foot.
They're not building them anymore, right?
Dude, there's no money in that product.
No,
there's a huge demand, but why would I build a single story 1,200 when I could build a 2-story 2,000 square feet and get substantially more money? The profit margin is just, it's evident. So what we end up having is, so the majority of homes really being built are in that price range, and a lot of those homes, they were new, but they were bullshit, guys. Like
cookie cutter
I can tell you
nonsense.
how many new homes I've sold in the last few years, on like pretty much one hand, because I have tried my best to discourage my clients because I never felt it was a good value long term. So the problem you have now is you have a glut of properties in that price range, and more so now you're directly competing with brand new homes. And so what did I just tell you? A brand new home. So Taylor Morrison is a national home builder. They're here in Las Vegas. They're probably the most aggressive as far as the price reductions. Let me get these numbers right. It was 925,000 list price, and they sold it for 745. A brand new home. So my thought is, at 925, it was like 2,300 square feet, single story. You're at 925. You don't have a backyard. Of course, you're going to want a pool. So you're going to spend 100,000 plus on that backyard to put in a pool and do everything else. So you're going to be in over $1 million. And to me, $1 million to live in just a regular gated community, 2,300 square feet, it's a lot of money. It's just a lot of money. Didn't really pencil out to me. But now at 745, that's pretty much what you're going to be paying for a resale home that likely needs a lot of work as well. So now all of a sudden, like, that's a flip flop.
Yeah.
If I can get that for 745 and I have to put a pool in for 100, I will be the first to admit that pricing actually makes sense. So the problem is if new homes are coming down to that level, that puts pressure on the resale homes that really can't quite compete. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on the resale market in that price range. And any buyer, especially if you're from out of state who doesn't want a brand new home, that's going to be problematic. And the reality, guys, is that's not going to last very long. Those price reductions are on standing inventory properties. So obviously they want to dump.
Once they're out. They're not, there's not another one behind. They're going to take a $200K haircut. When it's sold, it's sold. They're just slowing down.
And of course, the builders are slowing down on their permits. So what's going to happen, guys, is like you got this small window right now where you can pick up some deals. If you have your heart intent on buying a brand new home, you got a small window to jump in. They're going to eradicate their inventory, and then there's going to be a backlog of new homes. So, like I said, even though things aren't great, there's opportunities abound if you really look from a macro perspective.
Yeah. Folks, if you are looking in Vegas either to buy or be an investor, Brian Lebo is the man. I've sent many, many people to him. Brian, how should they reach out to you if they want to get some information on Vegas?
So generally, check out my YouTube channel. I do a monthly video update where I break down all these metrics and then bring in my narrative like you've just seen. So if you appreciate where I'm coming from, then you'll really like the videos because I give you the metrics and then I'll tell you whether or not this means something or if this is like an empty calorie. So check me out, the Lebo Group, or you can type Lebo Knows on YouTube and it'll bring you to my channel. Click subscribe, reach out to me. If you want to reach me directly, if you're like, hey, Bri, love what you're about and I want to buy in Vegas, contact me directly. You can reach me at 702-257-LEBO, L-E-B-O. Again, 702-257-LEBO. Shoot me a text, shoot me a voicemail. I'll get back to you.
There you go. Thank you so much, Brian. It's always fun.
All right, guys. See you next month.